Trials of Mana. What the fuck was that? Every once in a while, you don't really know what game to play next, so you just kind of browse through the options in your backlog, trying out different games, waiting for something to essentially click. Like we've all been there at some point in time in our gaming lives. So when I first picked up Trials of Mana through the Xbox Game Pass ecosystem and saw the game had multiple kinds of interesting concepts that really did pique my interest as a gamer who enjoys both action games and JRPGs in general. From deciding who your protagonist is to what your group of 3 heroes will be from the start of the game until the credits roll was a cool thing, and the game had multiple assets that really got my attention as a JRPG fan in general, because who doesn't like a chill RPG to play, am I right? Well, anyway, subscribe if you're new and let's get into whatever the fuck this game was and if it should be on the top of your backlog of games to play. Now, what makes Trials of Mana ultimately a fun game to play, for me at least, was how it kind of brought up some older memories of some older games that I used to enjoy a lot. And that means from the off, the game has this Breath of the Wild kind of Legend of Zelda-ish feeling to it, where the game has this kind of cutesy look but also very serious tones in its story and gameplay. The story, or more the premise of the story, is that you are the unknowingly chosen hero who is destined for the Sword of Mana, or at least if the words of your fairy companion are anything to go by, because you start off as one of the random heroes in a predicament of their own and set out to solve that one, only to soon figure out that greater powers are at play of JRPG course, man. Now, the goddess of Mana has, in the process of making the Sword of Mana, defeated 8 great beasts called the Benevodons and sealed them away in, surprise surprise, 8 different elemental shards that are scattered around the world essentially. And it's up to you to first seek the guidance of a small person guy named Jap, I think, and then he sets you out on a further quest to further evolve and further go on in the story, of course. Now, you are sent to stop the evil powers that be from re-releasing the Benevodons into the world and save the mana tree from withering away. I do find it funny that this game is a re-release, kind of remaster of an older game that released way back, and in the game you are tasked with stopping a re-release from happening. I mean, I can't be the only one who finds that even a little bit funny and kind of ironic, right? Right? Please don't leave. Now, I don't really have to explain in further detail, but I mean, man, it's a JRPG, so of course you fail in protecting these Mana stones, and the Benevodons are released, and the evil guys seemingly win around halfway through the game, and of course, the rest unfolds in kind of fixing the mistakes before taking on the great evil guy behind the lesser evil guy who tasked the even lesserer evil guy to kill you. I mean, bro, it's a JRPG, man. Of course, there's always a bigger fish in the sea behind the bigger fish. There's every JRPG, man. Since the inception of Japanese role-playing games, there's always been like an evil guy behind the evil guy behind the evil guy who wants to take over the world ultimately. Now, the way the game does this in the story really did take me by surprise, as the way the story is told, it kind of feels like you're the one doing the world a disservice in the end. And now I won't spoil it any more than that, but the twist in the game was a genuine surprise for me, at least, broski. And if it was the same for you, I do hope you let me know in the comments. Now, while that was pretty much the only twist in the story that I didn't see coming, the rest are kind of easy-ish to read if you pay literally any attention to the unfolding journey that is unfolding. I mean, you won't have to watch any lore videos to actually understand whatever the fuck is going on. And like, bro, I understood the story, so you'll have no issue. Like, me of all people understood the story. So bro, come on, you're not gonna have any issues following along. Now, gameplay wise, the carne of the game, of course, the gameplay, it's the same kind of ordeal where it's not overly complex in picking up, because most of the game you'll be pulling off the same kind of 2 or 3 combinations of attacks on your way to the end credits. And this is also where I was reminded of ye olden Twilight Princess or Wind Waker as well, because Legend of Zelda, man, the older games at least were never complex to begin with and are part of the reason why I just absolutely love that series to bits. I do also realize that, man, this is a Trials of Mana video and not a Legend of Zelda glazing series, so let's move on to the actual meat, the carne, which is the gameplay loop in the game. Now, this is where I did come across a slight issue, which I mean, there are quite a few issues in the game, admittedly, but depending on who you ask, this one might definitely be a deal breaker. From the way the levels are laid out in a linear fashion, you'll be fighting mobs after mobs in small arenas, and while that might not be an issue in itself, of course, the game does repeat itself quite a lot in all honesty. You not only have to clear the levels of enemies on your way to the boss, but also on your way back sometimes. And while there are certain items in the game that allow you to return to the entrance, it was never really explicitly said when you could use these items, which I kind of found a bummer in general. While the saving grace here is that combat scenarios don't last all too long and are okay fun to run through, especially later in the game once you've leveled up and added all these abilities in general. Who doesn't love to lay the smackdown on some peeps every now and then? But if I'm being completely honest in regards to the moment-to-moment gameplay, the combat in the game, the only real difference between the first fight in the game and the last fight in the game is your outfit looks a bit different. You tend to hit for a bit more, but it's generally against the same-ish kind of enemies, and it's the same rotation of a combo that you pull off most of the time, bro. You might also, on the off chance, have an elemental affinity on your sword or your weapon of choice, or have some kind of new spells going on in the background, which looks cool, but yeah, it's a bit meh. Unfortunately, most of the enemies in the game, like I said, man, are kind of same but different. But still same. With the only difference being really in the boss fights that you'll come against generally at the end of every level. And while these fights look cool in general, and some are actually super cool as well later on, often boil down to just a smackdown of hitting the boss more times than you can get hit. I would personally have loved for the bosses to have a bit more complexity to them, and I do hope that's a word, and some more variety in the gameplay sense, because there are a surprising amount of bosses to fight in the game. The first half of the game is essentially you just going to 8 shards around the world and clearing these levels before very oddly having to go back and fight 8 bosses in a row in a kind of boss rush moment in the game. Now thankfully here the traversal is made a lot easier, but I don't know about you, man, it felt like this moment of the game is where they kind of said, look, we've been building up this story for like 10-ish hours now, fuck it, just throw it to the side, go on this boss rush of 8 bosses in succession, and you know, just finish the game afterwards. It was weird, in all honesty. It felt very out of place, if I'm being completely honest. And it felt like it was forced a bit. Now, thankfully, the companions you choose to be with all the time pull their weight enough to not make every fight a slog to finish. And alternatively, you can just escape fights as well if you don't want to lay the schmackage. Like I mentioned before, you get to choose who the story unfolds with. And while it's a cool idea on paper, I didn't personally find any reason to really replay the game in the hopes of seeing other people's stories come to a conclusion of sorts. Now, leveling up, gearing up, and skilling up, if that's even a word, is all very linear. So the further you go, the better the gear is, of course, in the game, and by the end of the game it tends to get a bit expensive to buy the new gear, but in general it was all cool. You also meet elementals on your journey and you get to use their powers in the form of different spells, and those were cool too in general, albeit a bit simple at times. You also get to evolve your class over the course of the game, and that also gives you some freedom of choice and was a definite highlight in the game, and that was a positive surprise as well. I mean, there's a few. There are also different spells that work better depending on the time of day, and a giant turtle mount that looks just freaking awesome, and a dragon later on the game that makes traversal 1,000 times easier, especially once you go through that boss rush mode. Man, having the dragon that you can ride, similar to how it was in Ni no Kuni, the first one, the Wrath of the Lich King or Witch King, whatever it was called. That game had a similar kind of white dragon that you can ride around in the game, and that was pretty late on in that one. That's moving away from the subject. The idea is that here the mount kind of saves the game through the midway point of the game and up until the credits. There are also other cool elements like party aggression management and all that good JRPG jazz as well in the game, but overall, even with all these cool ideas on paper and some features that you'd hope to find in games thrice the size of this one, and again, I do hope that's a real word, Trials of Mana still doesn't feel like anything but an okay kind of mid-level fun time. It's all very meh, and that does ultimately bring us to the oh so great and completely imaginary rating system that we love to categorize games in on this channel. Now, if you're new here, I rate games on a 3-tier list system of day 1 buys, maybe waits, or only fans, pun intended. Now look, I had my issues with the game for sure, and certain story threads that hype you up for around 10 hours just stop completely without any real resolution, as well as some evil characters just up and vanishing into thin air, and the constant hope of waiting for the game to kind of ignite some extra flame inside of me, apart from the you know the assets of certain characters, as well as just hoping for the game to kind of motivate me to really go balls deep into it in terms of being invested, of course, not because of any kind of assets or googling Rule 34 on certain times of day on certain characters. Man, don't do that. Please don't do that. I think man I'm a bad influence. Trials of Mana still got me to play until the end, if that means anything. So I did end up having a medium level fun time, because otherwise I wouldn't see a reason to finish a game. I'm not the kind of person who forces myself to finish games. If I don't like it, I'm just gonna drop it. This one I did complete for some reason or another, man, which I can't really put my finger on. But because of that, because it got me to actually finish the game, I'd give it a maybe wait, which essentially means that if you find it super cheap on somewhere, then it's probably worth a picking up and kind of trying it out for yourself. If you have Game Pass as well, it's free on there. I mean, it's not free, it's through the subscription, but you get to at least try it and see if you like it for your damn self. The game ultimately has some fun moments in it with somewhat memorable characters, some twists and turns in the story, and some of these boss fights actually got me to lean forward in my seat instead of just leaning back all the time and being all chill and all that. This is one of those games also that if you have a Steam Deck, is just awesome to play on there because it's just a chill time to enjoy and get through. Ultimately, what the f do I know, man? I'm just a gamer on the internet telling you that I like the game. So now it's your turn to tell me if you like Trials of Mana, or if you are looking to play this game in general. Your likes and dislikes, man. Any kind of comment will take this video a long ass way to the greatness of the tube. So do leave a comment down below, man. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. That pretty much wraps it up for myself. I don't got nothing else to say in regards to this game. I hope you guys did enjoy the video, man. I've been your broski. I don't really know how to end this video, so enjoy this meme that I put in the outro. In the meanwhile, if you want to watch some more videos, man, click this link right here, click that link right there, or like I said, man, subscribe to the channel in general. Look, I hope you guys have a great day wherever you're from, whichever time of day you watch this at. Keep on trucking, my brochachos. See you next time. Peace.